Now let's get to some first dynamic processing. Let's talk, for example, again about the kick drum. It is highly dynamic. I mean, just look at the fader. It's going berserk. It starts off with somewhere beneath 0 and goes all the way up to 6 in every other kick. So yeah, this is crazy. We can't really leave it at that. Because with the dense metal mix, all the softer kick drums pretty much get lost. And the high kick drums just bug you in the end with all of their peaks and whatnot. So we kind of need to even it out and kind of try to get all those kick hits in the same volume area. And let's just try using a compressor with limiting settings there. So dynamic C1 comp. Now what I'm about to do may seem a little counterintuitive because using limiting settings on your kick drum will technically result in you losing transient detail and punch. But just bear with the counterintuitive for now. In the end, it will help. So let's do high ratio. Yeah, let's just go with a clean 10. Release, attack time. Actually, we can leave it at that. Attack 2 milliseconds, release 50 milliseconds. And now let's set the threshold that also the quietest kick hit kind of goes above the threshold. Let's see, where are some soft kicks over there? Yeah, we can ease up a little. Just a little more. What I'm doing right now, I don't want the limiting compressor to act more than necessary. So I really just want the quieter hits to just touch it. Still go a little up. Let's see. Okay. And as you can see in our meter over here, the kick drum isn't going berserk anymore. Okay, perhaps let's do the attack time a little faster, a little much faster. Let's go with a 0.5. And of course, let's check our volume balance again, because now we are losing volume again. So yeah, something like this. Now, don't worry about the peak still going above 0 here and above 0 here on our master bus, because there will still be a lot more dynamic processing happening later on that will make sure that you're not clipping. Now, if you don't want to limit your kick drum, I guess you could also edit all the kick drum hits that are too quiet, but then make sure you have a good psychiatrist or psychologist, because you will go crazy. Now, let's do the same again for the snare drum, but perhaps for a little different purpose. So again, compressor on the snare drum with limiting settings. kind of like the 10-to-1. And yeah, a faster release this time. And the point of this one now is I just want to catch the initial high peak. Okay, so it again doesn't go berserk and you don't get into the trouble of clipping or anything. Plus, limiting the peaks of the snare actually helps to fatten it up a little bit. So because you limit the peak, you can raise the volume of the snare and then you can actually get more of the actual crackling snare sound that is right behind the peak. So let's see, let's solo the snare. Yeah. And now look at the meter and listen to the snare as I'm turning this compressor on and off. So look and listen with the compressor off. And on. You notice you don't really lose volume in the snare, but your peak doesn't go berserk either. So this is a really helpful technique. I love limiting the snare. And now I also want to do the same on the toms again. Individually on the toms. I don't want to limit the whole tom bus. Because with the toms we also get some pretty peaks. Alright, now that I did all this, please keep in mind compressor does not equal compressor. So usually when you're using a kind of cheap digital working compressor, then you also lose the punch and transient detail when you go crazy with the settings like this. And that's not really what you want to have, because drums are all about transients. And the compressor I use here is kind of designed to keep the transient detail. So that's one reason why I can work like this. With other compressors, I can't do this because I'm losing what I still want to keep. So yeah, depending on what kind of compressor you use, you may not get the same quality, or you may get better quality, I don't know. Also depends on how you fiddle around with the settings. So never forget to just try it out, okay? Just experiment. Trial and error is an annoying procedure, but it's your friend. It's an annoying friend. It's the kind of guy who just keeps bugging you until you do it. And you really want to hate him for it, but you can't help but to love him either. Yeah, that's what trial and error in music production is for you. Now let's check the volume balance again after all the stuff that we did here and see how it mixes so far. Okay, toms could be louder. And hi-hat I had to take down just a little bit. Alright, now it sounds not too shabby so far, so let's see what we can do in the next tutorial part.